Hello, everybody, and welcome to Lesson 6. This is Knowledge 7, the history of the Earth, and today is a very important lesson. So I want you to really listen closely. Now, one of the things that I'm proudest of in first grade is when first graders remember that there are 3 kinds of rock. Okay, there are 3 kinds of rock. And here you see a page that introduces those 3 kinds of rock. The first one is igneous rock. An igneous rock there's a word, I think it's in Greek, igen means fire. So can you guess where igneous rocks come from? Yeah, okay. Well, igneous rocks are a kind of rock that forms when magma cools, hardens, and then turns solid. So, like, you know what happens when magma comes up out of a volcano? It comes up as lava, and then when the lava cools off, it becomes a kind of rock. Well, that's essentially what an igneous rock is. The second type of rock, the second word in the list, is metamorphic, and that literally means more than one shape, more than one form. It's a type of rock that forms when intense heat and pressure change igneous and sedimentary rocks into new rocks. So, if you took, a very, very, very large knife and cut off Mount Everest at the bottom and then lifted it up and put it on a rock and came back about 50 million years later, that rock would no longer look like the rock you originally put under Mount Everest because of the pressure. Pressure creates heat. Ask your mom or dad about what a pressure cooker is. Yes. And the third word in that list is ore. Ore, that's a noun. It's a rock that contains valuable minerals or metals. Like if you live up in Mineville, they used to mine iron ore there. That's what those mine shafts were for. Then the next word is sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock. That's a type of rock that forms from layers of sediments. Sediment is like the sand you find at the bottom of Lake Champlain. You can see how the water presses the sand down, and give it a long, 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 long time. All of that sand gets covered with more sand, and then you wind up with layers of rock. If you came back after a couple of million years, all that sand would have turned into a different form. And the last word is sediments. Sediments are little tiny pieces of dirt and rock that are moved by wind and ice and all that stuff. So we got the vocabulary out of the way. Let's look at some of the pictures. Now here is our happy little geologist, Jerry the geologist again. You remember him? Well, now the whole point of this lesson, let's not forget, is to learn that there are 3 types of rocks and to learn how they are formed. So listen and learn. This is Jerry pointing to a blackboard. The right amount of heat can turn a solid rock or metal into a liquid. Pressure from the weight of the earth and movement of materials inside the earth can crush rocks. Over time, the effects of heat and pressure create the rock formations and other geologic phenomena that we find in the world. Working together, heat, pressure, and time create the 3 types of rocks that exist in the world. Every rock in the world can be placed into one of 3 categories. 3 types of rocks. They are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. Try saying each of those words out loud. Come on with me, everybody. Igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic. So what are the 3 types of rock? They're long words, but it's great if you can remember them. Ooh. Look at this picture up close. The first type of rock, igneous, is the most common. That means there's more of it than any other. Igneous rocks come in many forms. Some form entire mountains, and some appear as boulders jutting up from the earth. This picture shows a close-up of one type of igneous rock. This plain old gray rock contains different kinds of minerals, and it hasn't always been a plain old gray rock. Well, the word igneous comes from the Latin word for fire. Well, I thought it was Greek. Because igneous rocks begin deep down in the heart of the Earth's mantle. Now remember where the mantle is, right? That's below the crust. As you have heard, the Earth's mantle is full of hot, gooey, oozing substance known as magma, or melted rock. The magma is constantly being forced toward the surface by pressure from within the Earth. As it travels upward from the mantle through the crust, the magma begins to cool and harden. Sometimes the magma will erupt from a volcano, but sometimes the conditions aren't quite right for an eruption. Because over time, heat forms magma and pressure moves the magma. And when the magma cools, it can form igneous rock, even if it's not being shot out of a volcano. It can cool off inside the Earth's crust, you know. This is Half Dome in Yosemite National Park in California. This formation is called Half Dome, and it's located in Yosemite National Park in California. When you look at Half Dome, you're looking at an old magma chamber. A magma chamber is a pocket or a place in the Earth's crust where magma collects. So think of an empty room in the Earth's crust. And then all of a sudden magma is pushing up and it's going to push into that empty room. Actually, that's what chamber means, is room. As more magma enters the chamber, it gets hotter and pressure builds. And the magma can force its way up to the surface in the form of a volcano. Or sometimes, as in the case of Half Dome, the magma just gathers in the chamber, like staying in a room, and stays there without erupting. For whatever geologic reason, the heat and pressure were not great enough, not strong enough to force the magma through the crust and onto the surface in the form of lava. Instead, the magma cooled and hardened inside the chamber. Over time, the rocks and soil around the chamber eroded away, leaving beautiful Half Dome alone, sticking high above the earth. Half Dome is certainly a big igneous rock. Ooh, stripes. You could see stripes like this, well, not exactly like this, but similar to this, driving up the Northway to Plattsburgh. This is another type of igneous formation that occurs when magma intrudes or pushes itself between two existing layers of rock. This means that not all the layers in this mountain were formed one on top of the other. Rather, some of the layers forced their way in between other rocks. So they kind of got squeezed in the cracks there. Ooh. Kind of looks like glass, doesn't it? This is obsidian. This is my favorite type of igneous rock, obsidian, better known as volcanic glass. Volcanic glass forms when certain types of lava cool and harden, becoming smooth, shiny, and glass-like. Only certain types of lava under certain conditions will ever become volcanic glass. Some Native Americans used volcanic glass to make arrowheads and spearheads. If you break a piece of volcanic glass, you'll find that it's incredibly sharp and strong. Every now and then I find ancient artifacts or objects made by people long ago, like this when I'm out rock hunting. So what kind of rock is obsidian? Right, it's an igneous rock, comes from a volcano. After igneous, the second major rock type is sedimentary. Yes, remember, whenever you hear sedimentary rocks, it's like putting one hand on top of the other. You have different layers, right? Sedimentary rocks are not formed like igneous rocks, which form from cooled magma. In fact, heat does not play much of a role at all in the formation of sedimentary rocks. Instead, pressure and time are the most important factors in the formation of sedimentary rocks. This looks like somewhere out in Arizona. Now, what do fish have to do with it? Well, this is about sediments. But before I start, remember, of heat, pressure, and time, which two are the most important in forming sedimentary rocks? Right, pressure and time. Okay. Well, the word sediments refers to tiny little particles such as dirt or rock, which are carried along in water, ice, wind, or landslides. Do you hear the word sediment in sedimentary? If you dump a spoonful of sand into a glass of water, for instance, you'll see the sand gradually sink down and settle on the bottom of the glass, much in the same way that sediments settle on the bottom of lakes and oceans. Here, sink means to drop below the surface of water. Okay, not something you do the dishes in. Sediments are always floating around in lakes, oceans, and rivers, and over time, sediments in lake water settles and forms a thick sludge on the bottom of a lake. As more and more sediments settle on the bottom, more and more weight presses down on the sludge. Over time, the pressure from the weight of the upper sediments can cause that sludge to become hard like a rock. Through time and pressure, layers of sediments are turned into sedimentary rock. So how are sedimentary rocks formed? Time and pressure turn layers of sediment into sedimentary rock. See, all that cloudiness that's in the water is really sediment that hasn't settled down to the bottom yet. Now, what in the world is all this? Well, this is coal, and coal is a type of sedimentary rock that comes from decayed plants that have been under pressure for many years. Coal is an important energy source. People can burn coal to create electricity for homes and make energy to power machines in factories. People get coal and other important rocks, minerals, and metals by mining them from the earth. One way to mine coal is by digging a mine shaft or funnel deep down in the earth. Now, we didn't mine coal in Mineville, but if you go down to West Virginia and Pennsylvania and places like that, they sure do. There are a lot of towns that just about everybody there works mining coal. Now, here is something that you might see if you live in Mineville, Witherby. This is iron ore. It's another sedimentary rock. It's called iron ore. Ore is a rock that contains valuable minerals or metals. There are many different types of ore in the world, but iron ore is one of the most important. Iron ore is the source of iron, a strong metal which is used to make steel. Steel is used to build bridges, cars, buildings, tools, and other things you see and use every day. Ooh, that's a nice picture. This is Bryce Canyon. Sandstone is one common type of sedimentary rock. Sandstone. Did you hear sedimentary rock? You can make layers of sediment with your hands, right? Whenever you find sandstone, there is a good chance that you are walking in a place that used to be completely underwater. At one time or another, every place on Earth has been completely covered with water, completely submerged. Thus, sandstone is quite common throughout the world. This photo was taken in Bryce Canyon in the state of Utah, which is known for its unusual sandstone formations. So isn't it strange to look at a picture like this and see how dry it is, but then the whole thing, everything you're looking at, used to be underwater? Yeah, isn't that crazy? Here's a nice picture. This is Antelope Canyon. Here's another sandstone canyon that I thought you would like to see. Antelope Canyon in Arizona is a very special place. It's known as a slot canyon, which is formed over many, many years as water from rain and floods rushes through the sandstone, causing it to erode or wear away. I'll show you some limestone cliffs. Watch this. Whee! I wonder if that's in Minnesota. If limestone if these cliffs are made of limestone, another type of sedimentary rock. Limestone is interesting because it is composed mainly of minerals left over from ancient sea creatures like clams, oysters, and other shellfish. When these creatures died, their shells sank down to the ocean floor and settled with other sediments. Over time, the churning oceans ground the shells into a fine white powder. The powder settled and more shells and sediments put pressure on it. It took many, many years, but eventually all that powdery shell leftovers were compressed into limestone. Limestone. Did you hear those words, pressure and time? Yep, with pressure in a long, long period of time, the shells of sea creatures turned into sedimentary rock. So, what two types of rock have you learned about so far? Remember, one is cooled by magma, that's igneous, and the other is made of sediments, and those are called sedimentary. Right. Now, if limestone is subjected to intense pressure for an even longer period of time, it can turn into another kind of rock called marble. Yep, marble. Marble is very hard, and it often has a beautiful, pure white color, like the one that the statue is made out of. That's actually made out of a rock called marble. Imagine that. Marble is one of the hardest rocks. People have used marble for thousands of years to make fine buildings and sculptures. Now, marble is known as a metamorphic rock. Now, metamorphic, that's the third and least common kind of rock. Remember, whenever you hear metamorphic rock, you want to hold out your hands and squeeze them tight. That'll make you, because that's what metamorphic rock comes from. It comes from the Greek word for transformation or change, and it's formed when other types of rocks undergo incredible pressure and heat, and they change into new kinds of rocks. So, a metamorphic rock, you could take an igneous rock or a sedimentary rock, put it under unbelievable heat, something incredibly heavy, and leave it there for millions of years, and it will change. It will no longer look like the thing that you put under that mountain. So, what's that third type of rock? Yep, it's formed when heat and pressure change igneous and sedimentary rocks into new kinds of rocks, and it's called metamorphic rocks. That's right. All right, congratulations. You are becoming a geologist. Now you know about the 3 rock types: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. Won't everyone be impressed when you tell them about the new words you've learned? And yes, they will. Not many people know this. Not many people can identify them when they see them, right? Let me just ask a few questions, like, what are the 3 types of rock? I just said them. Igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. Yeah. Now, igneous rocks are formed when magma of lava cools and hardens, and sedimentary rocks are formed when sediments settle and form a thick sludge on the bottom of a lake that thickens over time. The pressure from the weight of the sediments makes it harden into sedimentary rock. And how are metamorphic rocks formed? The ones I was just talking about? They are formed when heat and pressure change igneous and sedimentary rocks into new rocks. That's right. All right. Now, there's that one important word that we have to get out of all of this, and that is the word sediments. Like in the read aloud, it said sediments are always floating around in lakes, oceans, and rivers. You know, when you're swimming and if you've ever had goggles on and you're looking down in the water and somebody who goes walking next to you and you see a cloud form in the water, that cloud is all sediments. It's all settling back down into the lake, which, you know, if you come back in a little while after that person goes walking, the water is as clear as it was before because all that sediment has just settled down. When you go swimming, you can kick up sediments that are on the bottom of the lake. I'll describe some objects, and if I describe sediments, I want you to say, those are sediments. If I don't describe sediments, say, those are not sediments. I noticed tiny specks of dirt in my glass of water. Those are sediments. Yeah. The ants crawled through the blades of grass. Those are not sediments. The wind blew small bits of dust all over the car. Those are sediments. Dad cleaned the small grains of sand out of the bathtub. Those are sediments. The museum has many large gemstones. Those are not sediments. All right. We've just about gotten through this, and now there's something I have to share with you about tomorrow. It's going to be Monday, isn't it? You don't want to miss Monday's lesson, because Monday's lesson is about fossils and how they're formed, and who doesn't have a question about that? So be listening on Monday when we learn all about fossils, and just to give you an idea, down the road we're going to be learning about dinosaurs, so keep listening and keep learning.